Moving on, I want to briefly talk about the NFL Offensive Player of the Year. Once again, I'm going to give you a favorite, sort of a middle pick, and then a long shot, one or two. For our favorite here, I'm going to go with Jonathan Taylor. He is the favorite with this bet at plus 900. I think the narrative here is sort of easy. The story you can tell yourself here is relatively easy. This is a guy who was the best running back in football last year. The Colts really relied on him to move that offense, to move the chains last year, and he stepped to the call. He was a first-round talent that ultimately didn't go there because we don't see those NFL running backs go in the first round anymore. But this guy looks to be the package goods. He is the kind of player that franchises are looking for in that first round of the NFL draft, who can shoulder that load offensively, as we saw him essentially carry them to a near playoff berth with Carson Wentz imploding. For me, I'm not sure that I'm buying into Jonathan Taylor, especially with how Matt Ryan passes the ball to. He loves those sort of quick, short routes from his receivers. I think Nyheim Hines may cut into his workload a bit this year. But I think if you're going to bet on this, on NFL Offensive Player of the Year, it makes sense to hedge some of these longer shots I'm going to tell you about with a little bit of action on Jonathan Taylor. My sort of middle pick here is Justin Jefferson at 16-1. So Justin Jefferson, the narrative you can tell yourself is pretty straightforward. This guy is another player who, upon stepping into the league, essentially immediately established himself as a guy who's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. He is a stud. He had over 1,400 yards as a rookie. Last year, he seemed to take another step. And the narrative here is that they're bringing in, the Vikings are bringing in Kevin O'Connell from the Los Angeles Rams, a team that has done everything in their power last year to maximize Cooper Kupp as a receiver, Cooper Kupp in terms of mismatches and how they're using him in the slot and using his athletic gifts to just dominate teams from all over the field, outside, inside, everywhere, putting him in a position to consistently dominate the defense. That's part of the reason, part of what appealed to the Vikings about Kevin O'Connell, that he could come in and use a weapon like Justin Jefferson has proven himself to be immediately in ways that allow the Vikings offense to sing. Justin Jefferson, before he came into the NFL, was a guy who was regarded as, at the very least at LSU, this sort of really good, really gifted slot player. He hasn't been playing that role since entering the league. He's been outside, on the edge, a typical sort of X-receiver that we see. Now, with how the Vikings may use him this year, I could very easily see him challenging for 20 touchdowns in the right situation. It's not obviously a likely scenario, but it is one I could very well see happening. You can tell yourself that story and make it make sense. My long shots for the NFL Offensive Player of the Year are another Viking first, Dalvin Cook. And the case for Dalvin Cook is very similar to that of Justin Jefferson. This is a guy who has the proven pedigree, a multiple-time 1,000-yard rusher, extremely gifted offensive player. I know that, and from history tells us that in the age of these modern MVP awards, where it's essentially an MVP-only award, the league tends to gift the best running back with the NFL Offensive Player of the Year. If Dalvin Cook steps into this new Kevin O'Connell offense, there was news today that Alexander Mattison may be moving on to a new team, maybe traded. If Dalvin Cook can dominate that backfield as we've come to expect him to, because he does get a lot of volume when he is healthy, and if he can stay healthy, which is, I think, the most central question for Dalvin Cook, I think there is a version of this where you could see Dalvin Cook maybe leading the league in rushing, maybe catching 50 or 60 balls. His reception totals have gone down each of the last 4 or 5 years. My instinct, and based on everything we've heard out of Viking camp, is that the Vikings want to get him the ball in space, want to get him the ball as a receiver. So if his reception totals go up, he can add a number of yards through the air. I could very well see him making a case for NFL Offensive Player of the Year. So keep in mind, Dalvin Cook, those odds are juicy at 25-1 to win Offensive Player of the Year. My final Offensive Player of the Year long shot is Stefan Diggs. I mentioned this before, but if you believe in a team, you should be throwing a little bit of action on everyone involved, right? Because you think that this team's really going to crush it, and by extension, everyone eats when the team is winning. Everyone eats in terms of awards, in terms of contracts. That's just how it goes. If you believe in the Bills this year, if you believe that they're going to be a team that is crushing it all season, that dominates the AFC, that takes that leap in terms of being a front runner for the NFL championships the way we think that they should be this year, then I think it's worth throwing a little bit of money on Stefan Diggs to win NFL Offensive Player of the Year. This is a guy who led the NFL in end zone targets last year. If he connects on more of those this year, even if that number comes down a little bit with Gabriel Davis establishing himself a little bit more as a receiver, I just see a world in which this could happen, where we are rewarding Josh Allen with NFL MVP, and we're rewarding Stefan Diggs, his number one target, who saw over 160 targets last year and doesn't stand to lose much of that volume this year, as NFL Offensive Player of the Year.